when you get knocked off balance, how do you find your new bearing point?
Yes.
And I likened it to a radio, where you just need to tune in that tremendous frequency that
Yes.
gives you strength and is your anchor in a storm. And once you have tuned into that frequency, you're unstoppable.
Yeah.
You can hit favorite on your radio, and then anytime you have a problem, you can hit that button and you're right back into that finely tuned place.
Yeah, no, I love that JC is a beautiful analogy, and I promise you, I will be using that at some point down the road. So thank you in advance for sharing that. But you're absolutely correct.
The greatest form of flattery.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our mission here is to help you live your best audacious life ever. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, sharing insights and inspiration. And I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. Our mission is to empower you to step into your fullest potential and embrace a life that is bold, fulfilling, and unafraid to break boundaries. And now, imagine we're carrying a heavy backpack that's filled with stones, each representing a grudge, a hurt, or pain from the past. As we navigate through life, the weight becomes increasingly burdensome, slowing you down and clouding your vision. Now, picture the act of forgiveness as a gentle stream that flows beside you. With each stone you choose to release into that stream, you lighten your load, allowing the water to carry it away, ultimately freeing yourself to move forward with grace and agility. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with JC Chamberlain, an accomplished athlete and speaker, as well as the author of the book Antidote, an Emotional Wealth Framework to Build Resilience. With a rich background in competitive sports, including being a 5-time national champion in cycling and rowing, JC has transformed his personal journey of recovery and resilience into a powerful message of hope and empowerment. In our conversation with JC, we delve into the pivotal moment of choosing to forgive the driver who hit him. It was a decision that became a cornerstone in his recovery. This act of forgiveness not only liberated him, but also opened the door to healing and personal growth. We also touch on the concept of emotional bank account, a metaphor for investing in our relationships and our personal well-being. JC outlines the 7 elements of emotional wealth, which are dreams, health, learning, earning, giving back, connection to spirit, and love. Each of these elements plays a crucial role in building resilience and nurturing a life full of meaning. His personal story of overcoming adversity following a life-altering accident makes him the perfect guest for this episode. His insights on forgiveness, emotional wealth, and resilience are not only inspiring, but also deeply relevant to anyone seeking to navigate challenges and emerge stronger on the other side. So now that we've got you all set up, let's turn to our conversation with JC. Enjoy. JC, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I'm genuinely excited when I sit down and have these conversations. And something about today, I'm even more excited. Don't know why. I bet you got something to do with it. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time.
So glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm excited to hear your thoughts on the world and to maybe be a part of your world for a little while.
Yeah, no, this is great. I find these conversations. I think before we pressed record, I was just talking about how I got this thing going, and it really has now become my labor of love, my mission, and it's a blessing to be able to engage in these types of conversations. And I think I'm winning here because I get to sit down and talk like this all the time and walk away with this stuff. And but in spirit of sharing, I put it out to the world and get others the same blessing and benefit. So thank you for helping me fulfill my mission, man. This is awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. We were just talking, in the waiting room about when you get knocked off balance, how do you find your new bearing point?
Yes.
And I likened it to a radio, where you just need to tune in that tremendous frequency that gives you strength and is your anchor in a storm. And once you have tuned into that frequency, you're unstoppable.
Yeah.
You know, you can hit favorite on your radio, and then anytime you have a problem, you can hit that button and you're right back into that finely tuned place.
Yeah, no, I love that JC is a beautiful analogy, and I promise you, I will be using that at some point down the road. So thank you in advance for sharing that. But you're absolutely correct.
The greatest form of flattery is imitation.
Yes, yeah, I'm glad you're flattered. But it really is true, though. Like the idea of knowing there is this place called place of refuge that I can go back to in the moments where I'm down. And here's the thing. We go through life sometimes and we beat ourselves because we're down. Oh, I'm not feeling great. And it's like, you know, I shouldn't be. And we forget that we're humans and we have emotions, and being upset or not feeling great or not feeling like you want to smile today is part of that human experience. As up as I can be, I've got days where I don't want to do nothing, and I'm cool with that, right? But I don't beat myself because I feel that way. I recognize it. The only thing that I try my best to do is limit the time that I stay there. And so going back to your point, having that radio frequency that you can tune to will help you get out of that pit or hole or valley that you're sitting in the midst of. And I think that's a great strategy.
Absolutely. I think, you know, I held a book launch not too long ago. We just came out in December, and you know, we had about, I don't know, 75 to 100 people showed up who were just, you know, part of my world. And it was wonderful to put an invitation out there and have so many people from so many different parts of my life to show up. And a couple of days before that event, I was supposed to receive, you know, about 100 books. And a lot of people had told me, hey, will you sign my book? And will you come to the event? And I said, well, you know, it's not really about the book. It's about us being together.
Right.
And well, sure enough, the truck ran off the road somewhere in Tennessee, and we came to the event with no books. And I stood up and I said, hey, you know, we're available on Amazon, we're on Kindle, we're on audiobook, depending on how you like to listen or read. I said, but, you know, tonight we're on plan B, because most of our lives get diverted from our plan A course onto plan B. Yeah. And that's what the book is about.
Beautiful, nicely done. You know, people are gonna say you did that on purpose. You know that, right? They're going, "Oh yeah,
no, you know, some guys. One guy, a dear friend of mine, said that to me later. He said, "You staged that, right?"
I love it. I love it.
I said, no, I really did want to, because we were supporting a local foundation that gives bike helmets and bicycles to kids who need them, and I had committed, you know, for that event. And anything that we sell through that store, that we would give a substantial portion of the book sales to the foundation. And already it's generated $1,000 check, you know, to the foundation. So it's really heartwarming to see how people have turned up.
Beautiful. I think it's only fair if we give you an opportunity to fill an audience in a little bit about you and your background and what's kind of got you the point that you are. We absolutely are going to dive into your book and resilience and really being able to manage ourselves during periods of change, because that's kind of what life is. I mean, the pivot was a great word used a few years ago, and that became the top of everyone's vocabulary. But it was so true, because we had to pivot as a global society. And now I think as we're moving forward, we're understanding the importance of being able to pivot, change, adjust, adapt, be flexible. But yeah, if you could, JC, let our listeners know a little about you and the work you've done, and obviously I know we'll talk about your book as well.
Well, I mean, just to backtrack a little bit on me, I love that wonderful saying from Bette Midler. You know, after she talks about herself for about 10 minutes, she turns to her host and she says, "Oh, enough about me. What do you think about me?"
I love it. I love it. I love it.
You know, I've been, my mother used to say, and I was very fond of this myself. She would say, if I had to complain about my life for a whole minute, I would have to lie for most of it, because I've just had such a wonderful experience And a lot of people look at my life and they say, man, you suffered a lot, especially in the last 10 or 12 years. I was training for a rowing race in Boston, and I had been doing a lot of rowing, and I was at a bicycle ride in Ohio, and it was just a wonderful afternoon where one buddy of mine and I were riding east, and we were going to meet another group who was riding west, and it turned out that we were on the wrong road anyway, so we never would have met them. But we rolled into an intersection. I happened to be in the lead at that moment, and a car that was heading south took me out. He ran a stop sign on the gas, and he was going about 55 miles an hour when I hit the front of his car. And, I scraped off the whole right-hand side of his car and broke off the rear view mirror with my rib cage, and my helmet broke the windshield, and finally my left shoulder went through the rear passenger window, and the frame of the car caught my body, broke my shoulder, and it threw me 100 feet. Wow. And I landed on the gravel on my face on the other side of the intersection, and the whole thing took about a half a second. And I think because I had been training for rowing, I had a pretty good upper body for a mid 50s, and I had this extraordinary experience that unfolded from that traumatic event, and I think it was intended for me to be in that accident, that I was intended to be the first one through the intersection that day, that for a variety of reasons, I was given this experience. And I don't know where you land on the religious spectrum, but, I'm a deeply spiritual person. And I believe that fundamentally we are a spiritual being having an experience in a body, not the other way around, where the spirit motivates the body. We chose to have an experience here, and suddenly I was face to face with God in the ambulance, and I was welcome to ask anything. It was the most extraordinary. I didn't need a nose or a mouth or eyes or ears to be present with the higher power. And it was just, so I said, well, why me? Why now? Why this? What do you want from me? And God said, there was a fatal accident in your future that only I can see. And because I'm not done with you, I chose this accident because it is survivable, but it will change the course of your life so that that fatal accident is no longer in your future. End of conversation.
Right.
And about 90 minutes later, I woke up in an ER. And a whole series of events after that, led me to try to understand, why the heck am I here? And what are these resources that I have already that I somehow had developed beforehand that sort of qualified me for this experience that I was going to now, I'm on a new path. And, I've been a 5-time national champion in cycling and rowing. I've enjoyed a tremendous amount of success in sport, and I raced 1,100 races over a 10-year amateur and pro career as a cyclist. Went to Henley on Thames in England with a collegiate rowing team, and was privileged enough to meet the Queen of England at the time, which was pretty extraordinary. And, we've had some privileged experiences, and at the same time, I've earned my way to the podium, through hard work. And then, it's quite something to get to the finish with everybody else in most races. Right. And we see this all the time in Olympic competitions where there's a variety of people who are there at the finish.
Yes.
So how you behave in the last 500 meters is how history is going to be written.
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful. Yeah.
very early on, as a young teenager, I started racing about age 14, and I had really wonderful mentors, and they taught me a lot, and I realized pretty early on that I was coachable. And I think that's a thing that has enabled me to have a lot of success in business, a lot of academic success, and a lot of sports success over my lifetime. And how you behave in the last 500 meters defines whether or not you will be on the podium or you will just be finishing the race with everybody else.
It really is and I love that because it really is a true test of character. You're right. How you finish, and finishing strong is something I believe very firmly in, and I encourage that. I do a little bit of coaching in youth basketball, young boys, and I always it's to the point now they know in that fourth quarter, regardless what the scoreboard says, the message
Right.
is that let's finish strong. And
That's it.
it's because at that point, yes, we're there to win a game, but it's greater than just that. And
Yeah.
those thrilling comebacks in the final moments of any game is exciting, right? And to be a part of that is truly something special. So I love that. I may have to use that as well, JC. So you're on a roll here. I'm making note of all the things I'm going to flatter you with. I'd love to hear. So and thank you for sharing your story of that accident. The big part why I love stories and I love when people share their stories. There's for many people, and I'm glad this is the case, that when they tell their story of tragedy, it doesn't end at the tragic moment. Right. For some, it does, and that's all the story ever becomes. But it's what you do after that. That's where the story's like, here's what happened, but guess what? Here's what I did next. I'd love to hear what was your immediate. Here's what I did next after your accident.
Yeah. Good question. You know, I'm going to compress about the next 2 years into just a few
Sure.
sentences because I was really physically disabled. They said to me in the trauma ward that if I worked hard, I could learn to walk again, but that I would probably never ride a bicycle again. And I just could not abide by that.
Mm, I love that.
My mindset about the world includes movement, and I could not imagine a life without movement and a life without being on a bicycle somewhere somehow, even if I had to sit on the back of a tandem or something, you know. And in fact, that's what happened. About 4 months after the accident, a very dear friend of mine had been keeping my tandem that I had owned since 1982 in his garage because I didn't have room for it at my house where I was living at the time. And he showed up with my tandem, and he said it was February in Virginia, so it was cold outside, and he said, "Get your kit on, you know, your winter clothes, and we're going to ride." And I said, "Well, did you miss the part that I'm still on crutches?" He said, "I will get you to the bike. You get dressed." And each day he'd bring me coffee and we'd have our business meeting. We owned a company together, and then we would ride. And the first day we rode 5 miles, and, you know, I felt awful, but I was moving.
Yes.
And next day we rode 10 miles, and we continued to ride every single day that subsequent year, right away, proving the experts wrong, you know, from the hospital.
Sure.
And by the end of that year, we had ridden 5,000 miles together, and I had learned to balance again, and I was able to ride on my own bicycle again. So, you know, it was an extraordinary gift that he gave me
Right.
by being committed to that everyday activity. And I really believe this. You know, we all think we're motivated, and that's wonderful. And I know that I'm motivated, but I would say that discipline is going to win out over motivation every single day, right? And as you look at your basketball players, you see the ones that advance. You see those are the ones that have everyday discipline.
Yeah, yeah. That's a difference maker, right? It truly, truly is. And you're right. You can see it. It's very evident and very clear. Um,
Palpable.
you can, you're even like now as we're talking about, I'm thinking like an elementary teacher, right? Those that at a very early age, they can see those students, and not to say that it can't develop in others. So I want to be very clear. This conversation isn't about, well, either you have it or you don't have it. Either you have it is very evident early on, and if you don't have it, that doesn't mean it can't be developed. It has to be nurtured and developed and grown and
Right.
cultivated, right? And so I think that's a wonderful thing. And so you're up and riding again. You're feeling great about life. Your mission now becomes what, JC?
Well, I had a lot of other lessons to learn from this.
Okay.
And there was about a year of legal work that I never signed up for, but I realized I had to do
Mm.
with the driver who hit me, who had run a stop sign. And I was sitting with my attorney at one point. I had to make a number of trips back to Ohio because that's where I was hit by the car,
Hmm.
and my attorney is located there, and I live in Virginia. So I would make these periodic trips back to Ohio, and we were at a point where we had kind of exhausted the initial insurance resources, and my attorney said, uh, there was the guy who hit me is an MD. And the guy that I was riding with on that day is an MD.
Okay.
So I had these two medical doctors
Mhm.
present at the impact. Both of them later said, we just assumed you were dead
Wow.
because
Wow.
it was such an extraordinary hit. And fortunately, their medical training, both of them kicked in, and they ran to me, and they discovered that I had a pulse and that I was breathing, but I was out. I was really out. And so my lawyer said to me, the doctor has a uh, substantial 401k. We could go after that. It could be very lucrative. It would take a long time and a lot of depositions. What do you want to do? And I found myself in that moment. I kind of left the room,
Hmm.
and uh, I just had this feeling that I needed to forgive the doctor uh, and move on. Because, I mean, I could already understand that I was going to live, and
Right.
that I had already gotten on a bicycle, and it wasn't as portentous as the surgeons had predicted.
Mm.
And I thought, I think that protracted legal is going to ruin my life, and it could ruin his too.
Yep.
And he made a mistake. Uh, I'm not gloating about being in the right because I didn't have a stop sign at that intersection, but he made a mistake. And so in that moment where I was not really present with my lawyer, I chose forgiveness,
Mm.
and just a bluebird lit off in my heart, and it healed me. And I came
Mm.
back into the room and I said to my attorney, I said, Scott, I want to forgive this guy and move on. I don't want to go deeper into this. And he said, boy, John, that's the best news I've heard all year. And I knew I had the right attorney because, he was not litigious to the
Mm.
degree where he wanted to take advantage of the guy. And anyway, I think the timing was just right for us to both move on.
It's powerful.
And that really made a huge difference in my outcome. I believe
Yeah.
it healed me
Yeah.
in a way
Absolutely.
that I could not have predicted.
Absolutely.
And it opened up, you know, for a door to open, we have to close the door. And
That's
and I
right.
think that at that moment, a new door opened for me, and I found a pathway to not just heal, but to really get back on kind of nipping at the heels of my persona as a champion,
Mm.
uh, I had to delve back into that mindset,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
mindset that got me to a level where I was riding my bicycle at the Olympic cycling team level in the United States. And I just had to reset and understand how much it took for me to get there and get back on that path. And that's what I did.
John, I got to tell you, the idea of forgiving as a pathway to healing is so powerful. So let's just say
Yeah.
hypothetically, you decided, no, we're going to take this guy to the cleaners. We're going to get as much as we can out of him. That now starts a legal process. It'll probably go on for a number of years,
Yeah.
undoubtedly. So what that essentially means is that you're replaying this thing over. It never goes away. You're talking about
Right.
this thing. You're reliving it. You're experiencing it each and every time you start a legal process or fill out a document or a deposition or make a court appearance in relation.
Right.
It's still there, as opposed to really putting it in the rear view where it belongs. And
Right.
certainly, no one's saying ignoring it. No one's saying pretending it's not there. In fact, you want to be able to acknowledge it. And so
Right.
times like now, you can go back and draw it and go, "Hey guys, here's a story I got to tell you, but here's what I did to get out of it." Going back to my point why I get excited about storytelling, right? Like, here's what happened. This is what I took from it, but here's how I got better, and here's how you can. It's not even inspiring others, but it doesn't happen until you're forgiving. And so it's beautiful that you've done that. That certainly takes a significant amount of work on the inside. It very much is an inside job as a starting point. Are you able to? I'm not sure fully if there's a process to healing from the inside, but maybe you could.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, when I was in high school, the director of admissions for my school became a close friend. He was a terrific outdoorsman who had been the guy who started Outward Bound in this country. Now, if you're familiar with it,
Yeah.
but it's a 3-day survival
Yes.
skills. You train and you learn, and then so anyway, he was the director of admissions at my school, and at one point he wrote me a birthday card just because he was just a terrific friend, and I was really blessed to receive such a thing from him. And he said, I've come to know you over these past several years as a student and an athlete. And he said, we typically try to take a student and turn them into an athlete. He said, but in your case, we took a great athlete and we turned him into a student. And I had come to the school not so prepared academically, but I was coachable, and so I was able to turn an athletic training technique into, I applied it into a new arena, which was to really become proficient and excel in academics, and that got me into rowing. And there's a trick that we use in rowing, which is very useful in life, and because a rowing race, is a couple thousand strokes that you have to reach out and dip your oar in the water, and you have to hold the oar in a very specific angle, and you have to pull it through so that the water, it doesn't sink in the water, it just pushes the water. But especially as an early rower, you take bad strokes. I mean, it's a fact of life that sometimes we trip up, and so you have to recover quickly, and then you have to let that stroke go. Literally, you have to push it behind you as you move down the lake or the river. And I had an early coach who was a woman who'd come off of the national team in rowing, and I was fortunate to be able to row under her, and she taught me this concept of allowing to release bad strokes, and it becomes really critical in a race. If you hold on to that bad stroke, you're going to take a second bad stroke, and then you could be literally thrown out of the boat if you hold on to the oar and the oar does something that's you didn't want it to do. And I think we can apply that technique to life, and that is to let go of a bad stroke. And in the case of this bad experience where I was hit by a car, I needed to compartmentalize that part of my life. and move on. And that I've been able to apply that technique in so many other parts of my life that I think it enabled me to not only see it in the rearview mirror, as you say, but also to heal and grow again in a new direction. And that's what happened for me.
And when you think about sort of the the crises that life will present us, and there will be lots of them. That approach or technique, it's universally applied, and I think that's the way to proceed forward. Again, not pretending it didn't happen, not acting like it didn't impact you, or there wasn't any, oh, no big deal, and my ego says I don't have to deal with it. Like it's not that at all, right? It's like,
Right.
yeah, this thing, acknowledging it. I think acknowledging its place in its life, and then sort of what you walk away with, because you always leave with something. Like you leave with something, whether you realize it or not, you leave with something, and I think that's part of that healing and really going on to that next step, which is fabulous. Emotional wealth is something that you've written. You want to sort of elaborate on that a bit further? I know there's there's sort of 7 principles in line with that you sort of encapsulate in there.
Well, I think I look back. I had some time to sit and think while I was laid up, and that can be dangerous or it can be beneficial. And I've always had a knack for reframing life setbacks into opportunities instead of reframing them into a downward spiral that doesn't lift you up. And I think that's where I began to visualize some things that had been a thread through an earlier part of my life. To be completely honest, and maybe a little bit too simplistic about this, I was a scoutmaster for 16 years. So I've been involved with youth in much the same way you've been involved through basketball. In this case, it was through an outdoor life of learning skills and group dynamics, and yeah, you learn some first aid and some knots. But I would frequently tell the boys, this is about managing disappointments, and it's about group dynamics and understanding how to bring a group along a path. That's called leadership.
Yep.
And so kids would come to me and they'd say, Mr. Chamberlain, how can I get my parents to trust me more? I want to go to this concert. They don't want me to, they don't think that I'll do the right thing. I said, well, how's your emotional bank account with your parents? And they'd say, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'd say, well, do you have a passbook savings account? Like, you earn some money, and what do you do with it? They said, well, yeah, I have that. I said, so you earned some interest on that too, didn't you? And he said, yeah. So you see your balance has been coming up, right? Well, our emotional bank account is similar to that. And if you want to get more responsibility, more freedom from your parents, then you need to build up your emotional bank account. And the emotional bank account is something, they said, well, how does that work? I don't understand. I said, well, how about doing something that you weren't asked to do? How about doing something that you're supposed to do and don't take credit for it? Those are things that build up a trust relationship with your parents. And so that was the seed corn for this book. It started out, where a scout would come to me and I'd say, well, how's your emotional bank account? And then I went through this experience of this accident and I realized that I had resources too. And they were not necessarily physical resources. Some of them were good. Physical, I had good insurance. I had a good physical body. I was able to absorb the impact of the hit. I had a pretty good spirit, and so I was resilient in a way that enabled me to start to believe in myself again, even though some of the other pieces of that puzzle had fallen apart. And so I realized that I had resources. People were asking me, how did you come through this? And I began to formulate what the resources were. And those evolved into these 7 emotional bank accounts that really, they begin with your dreams. The way it all started was I came up with 6 of them: your health, your life of learning, your life of earning, your life of giving back, your connection to spirit, so connection to the divine, and then love. So that's 6, right? So your love is all of your relationships.
Yes.
And so I sent those off to my mom, and I said, I think this is why I survived. I think I was intended to kind of understand these 6 parts of my life that made it possible for me to get through this, and that it's my job to share that with people. And she said, well, yeah, that's fine and everything, but you're missing one. And I said, well, yeah, she's always that way. She was always trying to push me to be a better version of me.
Right.
And she said, you're missing your dreams.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, what do you mean by that? She said, well, without your aspiration, without your dreams, you have nothing. And once you do have a dream, then you can be inspired to have a goal. And when you have a goal, then you sweat. And so it leads from aspiration to inspiration to perspiration. And I realized that dreams needed to be part of this, and I thought, well, I'll just tack that on as the 7th part of this framework of emotional wealth. And then I realized that it really begins with the dream. And once you have your dreams in mind and articulated, then all of these other things come into play. And so there are 7 elements of this emotional wealth framework. I chose a new blended word, wealth, WELLTH, because it's a combination of wellness and being wealthy in what matters most.
Absolutely.
And yes, earning is a part of that. It's one of the elements, because I think we underestimate just exactly how emotional we are about our finances.
Sure.
And when we get those right, then it really gives us a tremendous leverage in our lives.
And the ability to focus a bit more too, right? Because you're not just focus on the things that truly do matter, as opposed to things that could be solved if your financial position was in a better place. Let's say hypothetically, right?
Right.
I mean, the other things they come from within, whereas the where am I paying my next bill is the external piece, right? So, and the internal again. And so going back to being resilient.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. One of the things I think you've been probably very successful in helping your athletes focus on this in basketball is when the reward is intrinsic, it's so much more powerful than extrinsic. Right? Extrinsic is you got an A, right? But the real question is, how do you feel?
That's right.
And you made that basket, or you did teamwork, and you guys came back in the last quarter, and you came from behind and you won. How do you feel?
And what's good about that is that feeds itself, because that good feeling carries over and it sort of creates this loop. So the key is to get yourself on that loop and keep that good feel going. And not that the good feeling is going to last forever. You can go have a great game day 1 and go over 10 the next game. That's just part of it. But but because you're riding this high, right, your ability to bounce back, your resilience level is much higher, and you can overcome that much quicker. And that's really what we're getting to in this entire conversation is how do we build our resilience to get through those difficult times faster? Because the difficult times are going to come.
That's right. That's right. That's the one guarantee we have, is that we're going to have a setback.
That's it. The book is called The Antidote.
It's called Antidote. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah. A new emotional framework to build.
Yeah, an emotional wealth framework to build resilience.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
For listeners that wanted to grab a copy, learn more about it, where can we send them, JC?
Pardon me? Say that again.
Where can we send them to pick up a copy of their own book?
Oh, yeah. Antidotethebook.com. So antidotethebook.com. It's on Amazon. It's on Kindle, and it's also an audiobook on Audible. I would love to hear when you get a chance to listen to it on Audible, if you recognize the reader. I don't recognize the reader.
That's awesome.
But that's what they say.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
wow.
So it's available, and now it's also available in hardback for libraries and things like that, bookstores. So we've been blessed with a lot of people picking it up right away. Within the first week, we went to number 5 on Kindle Business.
Beautiful.
And we've been kind of moving along since then. So it's really been a terrific run, and I'm excited. One of the things I do want to mention is that I've developed kind of almost like a seminar because people were asking me, how can we kind of get this in 30 minutes, all of what this has to offer. And so I've developed a life satisfaction quiz, life satisfaction survey. And it's the shape of a wheel. I'm building a little mobile app for it. But what it allows you to do is rank yourself 1 to 5 in each of the 7 areas. And then you see from your own opinion how you're doing.
Gotcha.
In these 7 critical areas of your life. And then we focus on exactly what the resources are that got you to a high number. You gave yourself a 4 or a 5 in the area of love or health. Why is that? How did that happen? I really believe success leaves clues.
It does. Absolutely.
When we see something out there that's successful, we need to explore what it is, what are the resources that got them there.
That's right.
And once we understand that, we've got these resources, then we go explore the 1 and the 2 ratings where you don't feel quite so good about who you are or where you are. Maybe it's you lost your job, or you going through a divorce, or you have a change in your career that was unexpected. That could lead to a low score. And so then we go back to the resource book, and we help you build your emotional bank account again. Wow. So that's something that's coming soon. And I can say that you'll find it also at antidotethebook.com when people go there to find the book.
Exciting. I love the offering, and I think it's a nice sort of tag along, if you will, with the book and all the messaging and your work that you're doing already. So I think that's fantastic. This has been a phenomenal time together. I truly appreciate the insights.
Thank you.
Thank you for the lessons, the perspectives. Again, we can tell our stories, and we can choose to end it at the tragedy or keep it going and teach them and share the lessons. And you've clearly done that. So congratulations on doing that, because that is no small feat. Congratulations on the success of the book. I encourage you. I wish you much continued success. And I really want to thank you for being a guest today here on the Audacious Living Podcast.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you, Audley.
Back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to JC for being here. During our chat, he emphasized that forgiving is not just a gift we give to others, it's a crucial gift that we give to ourselves. By choosing to forgive, we can release the emotional burdens that hold us back and create space for healing and growth. His journey illustrates that while the road to recovery may be fraught with challenges, the decision to let go of past grievances can unlock new pathways to happiness and fulfillment. What I personally loved about the interview with JC was his genuine approach to sharing his story. His vulnerability and openness about his struggles and the triumphs were truly refreshing and motivating, reminding us that reminding us all of the strength that we have inside of us. And I encourage you to connect with JC directly. You certainly can find all his contact details in the show notes below. Don't miss all the opportunity to engage with his resources and insights that can support you in your own journey. And again, his book is that I encourage you to check out is The Antidote, which is available on Amazon as well as other platforms. He also offers a life satisfaction quiz designed to help individuals assess their emotional wealth across the 7 key areas of life. It's an excellent tool for anyone looking to enhance their resilience and well-being. I want to thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast and being a part of this episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, please take a moment to like, follow, subscribe, and share. If you haven't already done so, you can share this podcast and help grow our community. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to bring inspiring stories and valuable insights. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.